Okay, so I want to go over quickly, just showing you what we went over yesterday during that class time. All right, so to start, I explained to you what the difference between 72 DPI, which is low res, as opposed to 300 DPI, that is high res. Um, so, so to illustrate that or refresh your memory, um, the first thing we do when we open something up, generally anything that we download from the web is going to be low res. So we come up here to image, go to image size, and right here you can see 72. At low res, this file would print 25 inches wide at low res, but we need to make it high res. So you want to make sure that um, if we change this to 300, it keeps this at 25 inches, and you can see the image size more than 4 times what it was, right? I mean, it was 6.18 meg, now it's 107. It didn't actually change, and you can see it became very pixelated, right? So you don't want to just simply change this to 300. You need to deselect, resample, so you have all three of these connected. So now you can see 25 inches wide at 72 DPI, 300. Now that jumps down to 6 inches. All right, and you see the image size doesn't change because we're not changing the amount of pixels that go into the file. All we're doing is condensing the quality of that low res into a high res representation of that image. So you want to make sure when you change something to 300, make sure these three lines are all connected, and this should never change when you change from low res to high res. Okay, so that's the first thing, explaining the difference between high res and low res. Um, okay, then we talked about adjusting the hue and saturation. Let me get rid of this. So I used these examples yesterday. Um, so the first thing that we did was use that hue saturation. So in here, if we want to change the entire color of this apple, you go to adjust and go down to hue saturation, and you adjust the hue to change the entire color of everything. All right, so that's one way to globally change a color of something in the image by using the hue saturation. Um, the lightness, I do not like using the lightness and darkness. If I want to change how something changes as far as that brightness and contrast, I'll come up here and use the very first option. Now, I personally prefer going back into legacy. There are times that, this does work. It kind of constrains what you're trying to do. But you can see if you select legacy, it definitely gets a lot darker, quicker. It kind of like ignores the original quality of the image itself. So depending on what it is that you're trying to achieve, you'll have different results by using the legacy or not. All right, so now this works if you want to change the color of everything. If you want to change the image of just one thing, and here we use the example of the apple, and in this case, the green leaf. So when we go into hue saturation and we adjust the green, you can see this becomes kind of like a teal blue, all right? So we wouldn't want to simply change the entire image because it wouldn't make sense. So when this happens, we go to image, adjust, and go to replace color right here. Now with the eyedrop, we select the red to start off with, change our hue, and you can see whatever is highlighted in white is being changed. If we want to add to that, we select the second option with the eyedrop with a plus symbol and click. And as we go into it, you can see it selects more of that color, but it will leave this color alone. All right, so that's another way of adjusting the colors to what we want, by not affecting the entire image as a whole. All right, so that's the second way. Then the third way was to use your pen tool to isolate a certain object. So to do this, let me pull in my path here. So we have our path box right here, and we want to create a new path. And then we want to use our pen tool. Let me pull that in so you guys can see. Right here. When you select your pen tool, you want up on top, you want to make sure that you're using a path. There's a lot of times if you're not paying attention using shape, that's going to cause an issue. So you want to make sure if you're trying to create a clipping path in this case, make sure you have path selected. So now with new path 1, the pen tool, then you simply create an outline around the object that you want to isolate. Okay. So once you have that set, you want to hold on to Command Option. You see a little square pulls up next to the hand, right? When you click, it makes a selection of what we just clipped out. All right. So now, if we go to Adjust Hue Saturation, it will only affect whatever is selected. All right. So that's that third way of being able to change the color of like one little item of something that's on the inside. There's also another thing. I think I did not tell you guys this. There was another way. I'm going to go back to that other image. Let's go back to this one for a second. This tool is pretty useful, especially when I'm trying to adjust colors and I want to kind of be super lazy and quick with it. So I go into my hue saturation here. I'm going to adjust everything to what I want, and I'm kind of ignoring the leaf right now. I'm just focusing on the apple. I'm going to adjust the leaf in a second. So once that's set, you can hit OK. And then there's this tool over here next to the eraser. It's called a history brush. All right. What that's going to do, I need to pull in my history for you so you can see. Okay. All right. So right here, if there's a bunch of things that we have done in this file, they'd all be recorded right here all the way down. And you can see there's like the same icon right next to by default when we first open it. But you can move that anywhere. So if this was like completely full, you'd be able to move this brush anywhere on this timeline of what we've done. And what the brush is going to do is when we click, it's going to bring back whatever that was at that particular point in time. So you can even see as we go through, we'll bring back the red because that's where that was. All right. Then we adjust it because I want to go back to what this was, and I had moved my history brush there. All right. So that's another way that you could quickly change something and then go back in. And nitpicking, I probably would go back in and adjust the stem completely. Right. So there are other ways, like I said before, there are so many ways to get what you want in Photoshop that there's never going to be one way. So I'm basically showing you guys how I do things, and if you find another method that gets you to the point of where you want to be, then go for it. There's no one way, especially in a program like this that's massive. That I'm telling you, you have to do it my way or no way. Okay. Okay. Now getting into the spot color. Hopefully you remember the speech about what spot colors are. And this project in particular is using only 2 spot colors. All right. So right here, the difference is like all of these are using, the RGB because it's on screen to give us all of these colors that we're seeing. When it would get printed, it would be using CMYK to give the representation of what those colors are. For this project, you're allowed 2, so we essentially have to strip out the color and only use, at most, 2 spot colors. So the first way is changing it to a duotone. By default, if this is an RGB or CMYK, duotone is going to be grayed out. It's not an option, all right? To be able to get it into duotone, we need to backtrack into grayscale. And this is basically going to rip out all the color itself and only have the tones for this image. Once it's in grayscale, we can go back in and now duotone is available. So when this clicks, yesterday I used green, so it remembered what I was doing. So here you would end up clicking in here and changing whatever the colors of what you wanted, all right? So these would be one color. So we're using basically, in this case, like a burnt orange, or let's go straight to red for this one spot color. Now, I talked about things that have to stay in gamut. Right now, because of this being an RGB, you can select colors on screen that cannot print. All right, so right now you can see RGB, 25500, and the CMYK equivalent of this is 099100, but we have a caution sign. When you see that caution sign, it's telling you that you cannot print that color. So when you click it, it'll drop down into a color that will be printable. All right, so you can see the RGB changed, right? It's no longer 25500, but the CMYK did not, because this will not print this way. It will print this way, which is that. So just make sure when you're choosing colors, you stay within gamut, all right? So this was one way of having your different color duotones for this project. The other way is to set up your file. So let's bring us back into our CMYK. And in here, if we click on, say, green to white, so I have green here, white down there, you go to adjust and go to gradient map. This now places this green over the black and white photo, so it goes from the darkest green down to nothing. You can adjust that by clicking on the inside, and you can play around with where this falls, right? So how much green you're allowing to seep into the dark areas as the gradient goes down. So this basically, you're controlling the 50%, right? Dead center, 50% goes from the dark green to white. I'm adjusting where that 50% is. So from here to here is 50, from here to here is 50. And you can see there's more of that 50% from here to here to gradually go into white. So it's like a quick going from the dark green, quickly getting to that mid-tone green, and then slowly sloping down to white. All right, so there's ways to adjust this. And then there's ways to adjust the actual color itself in here, right on the fly. So you can see how things will work without backtracking and going through that process again. All right, so then once you have this, then you want to save it. For these kind of images, you want to save it as a TIFF. All right, so you go up to save as, desktop, go to TIFF, and then you hit save. I'm going to hit replace, and then hit OK. And now this can be brought into Illustrator. All right. Okay. Next, I use this one, I believe. Now what I want to do, we want to isolate the white, or rather in this case, we want to remove the white background so we can isolate the apple by itself. Now, in the layers, it starts off, it's locked, it's a background, so this means there's only one layer that's completely flattened. So we want to right click and we want to layer from background. So this way, our background is at 0. There's nothing underneath, okay? Then we want to use the quick selection tool. Use this tool, not the magic wand. So the second option, and we simply go around and click all the white. So now all the white is selected. And then we hit delete. So now you can see the white is removed from the background and we're left with just the apple. This way of doing it only works if the whole background is solid white, okay? If we try doing this on this file, I mean, it'll take a little bit. Actually, no, this one here has already been clipped out. But let's do this to prove my point for a second. So if we have this white background and there's an actual shadow here, as we go around, sometimes it won't have that option to go through. All right, in this case it does, so I just made myself a liar for you. But there are times that this will not happen. All right. Okay, so same thing. Once you have that, you now are ready to save this. You don't want to save this as a TIFF. TIFF should only be saved as solid rectangle square images. If you want to save this and keep the background empty, you want to save it as a PDF. So in here you go to Photoshop PDF, save, replace, okay. And here, all it's asking you is preserve the Photoshop editing capabilities. That just basically is going to give a little bit more information into the file. I prefer to have the ability to do changes again when I save a PDF. So hit save, yes, and then there it is. So now we have two objects that we want to now bring into Illustrator. Okay, so do I have an Illustrator file open? Possibly not. All right, while that's loading, there was one other thing that I showed you guys too with these clouds. So there's times that you want to use a file, but it becomes a little short, right? And I wanted to show you how you could increase the size of that background image. So in this case, image size, we went to 12. That's not what I want. I apologize. So let's go to 13. So then we end up, for whatever reason, we need to add more of the sky to this image to use it. There are times you can get away with using the smudge tool to increase what you have going on, right? In this case, because it's a pretty dark image with the background, you can get away with doing this. Not a problem, okay? But when the image is something like this, we wouldn't be able to do that, right? Because as we pull this up, you can see how it just looks so fake and strange. What we can do is use this cloning stamp to come in here, select a part of what we want to copy. So when you hold Option, you can see you have that crosshair. Click, and then you can fill in with what you're trying to fill in. In this case, we're trying to add more of that sky. All right. Every time you hold Option, you're selecting another part of the image of what you're trying to copy. All right. So then it doesn't look as fake as just using that smudge tool. Okay. That looks strange. I probably would come in and trying to adjust so it doesn't look like a repeated pattern. Now, this also works. Say you were using this image as a background and you want to drop text up into here, but these clouds here was causing an issue with readability in contrast. Using the cloning stamp, you can isolate or rather copy over the location of those clouds. So this way then they will not be part of the actual file. So the text will look a lot cleaner up against this particular background sky. All right, so that's another use of this tool. All right. Okay. See if Illustrator is open. Excellent. Create. So now to bring in images into Illustrator, you have a couple options. You can place or you can embed. If you're creating a massive book or something that has a lot of images, every time you embed an image, it adds to the physical size of that file. In this case, you're using at most 3 images, minimum 2. So there's not going to be a lot of images to use, right? So there's a benefit to just simply embedding them into your Illustrator file. To do that, right-click, open with Illustrator. This instantly is going to open this file up into Illustrator, and it's now embedded. So when we copy this and then Command V paste, this is part of the file. All right. So if something happens to this file, I throw it away by accident, I don't copy it, or whatever happens, it will not affect this. If we place it and then we lose this, then you have to go find that image again because it's only simply linking to that image. It's not part of the Illustrator file. All right. Same thing with PDF, open with. And then you can see here, the background was cut out, right? So there is no white anymore for that apple. All right. The other thing that that another way of changing. So if you save all your images as black and white, and I'm just going to quickly convert this to grayscale in here. You can adjust colors on top of this. So if I draw a box and I use a blue here, let me grab my, all right, where are you? Did I leave over here? There it is. So in here, by default, this object is normal. If we click multiply, it will allow whatever that is behind to seep through that color. All right. So then you can adjust the colors itself in Illustrator as opposed to adjusting the colors in Photoshop. There is no right way or wrong way. I think the end result will be just the same. I think either way is going to give you the same result. All that matters is what do you feel comfortable achieving and basically using for your tools to produce what it is that you're trying to create. All right, so either way is going to work. And then creating swatches. So what you want to do is, we have these different swatches up here. These are the default in Illustrator. They're not all the ones that you can have. So as you choose whatever swatch you want, say this is the color that I really want in my file, you want to create a swatch. The reason you want to create a swatch is because there's times that, colors on screen look a certain way, but then when we print them, they look entirely different. All right. So you want to give yourself that opportunity to make changes when it comes time to print quicker, without having to go back through and adjust every single time you use that color. So in here, once you have the color that you want, you click this plus symbol for a new swatch, and then here it says process or spot, and then hit OK, and then it's going to drop right there. So now this color, every time that it's used elsewhere, if we want to change it, we change it in here, right? Not using anything else. So this way then, if you used it 100 times on a file, those 100 times wherever that color is being used is automatically adjusted by adjusting the swatch itself. Okay? Okay, so those were the things that we went over yesterday. Hopefully, if you do want to reference this will be useful to you. But yeah, if you have any questions, obviously reach out to me or ask me when we meet up on Monday. But hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week.